What if the biggest threat from Iran isn't what they've already launched, but what they can launch next? Tonight, a former commander of United States Central Command is warning that the critical next step for the United States is clear: shut down Iran's missile and drone machine before it strikes again. While Americans worry about rising gas prices and global instability, the regime in Tehran still has the ability to threaten allies and choke off the world's energy supply through the Strait of Hormuz. The question tonight: will Washington act decisively or risk a much bigger crisis tomorrow? The immediate priority being discussed in Washington and military circles is stopping Iran's ability to launch missiles and drones. Despite ongoing strikes against military facilities, intelligence reports suggest some launch systems remain operational. Iran has spent years expanding its missile and drone programs, developing mobile launch platforms and underground storage sites designed to survive air campaigns. Supporters of aggressive action argue that neutralizing these systems quickly is essential to protect U.S. allies and secure global energy routes near the Strait of Hormuz. Critics, however, warn that escalating strikes inside Iran could widen the conflict and draw more regional actors into the crisis. Media coverage reflects these divides. Conservative outlets emphasize deterrence and security risks. Liberal outlets focus on escalation and diplomatic alternatives, while neutral reporting highlights operational challenges and strategic timing. The real question moving forward is whether these threats can be eliminated without expanding the conflict. What do you think the next move should be? Share your thoughts, because the next developments could shape the region's future. Another major objective now being discussed is targeting the core of Iran's ballistic missile network. Recent operations have reportedly focused on facilities linked to missile storage, production, and launch preparation. For years, Tehran has invested heavily in long-range missile technology, building factories, underground tunnels, and mobile launch systems that make detection and destruction far more complicated. Military planners argue that unless these production centers are disabled, Iran could quickly rebuild its arsenal even after current stockpiles are reduced. Supporters of this strategy say eliminating the infrastructure protects regional allies and strengthens deterrence. Critics caution that deeper strikes on industrial sites could escalate tensions and complicate future diplomacy. Media coverage reflects that divide. Conservative outlets emphasize removing long-term military threats. Liberal outlets highlight risks of widening the conflict and the need for negotiations, while neutral reporting focuses on strategic feasibility and intelligence challenges. The real debate now centers on whether dismantling these systems brings stability or pushes the region toward a longer confrontation. What's your view? Let us know, and stay tuned as this story develops. Another strategic priority now under discussion is maintaining clear air and sea control around Iran. Recent military operations suggest the United States and its partners are working to limit Iran's ability to move forces, launch aircraft, or operate naval units in the region. Establishing this kind of dominance allows surveillance aircraft, drones, and naval patrols to operate with fewer risks while restricting Iran's response options. For years, Iran has relied on asymmetric tactics, fast attack boats, mines, and mobile air defenses to challenge stronger militaries in nearby waters and airspace. Supporters of the current strategy argue that sustained control reduces the threat to allies and protects global shipping lanes. Critics warn that prolonged military pressure could deepen regional tensions and make diplomatic solutions harder to achieve. Media coverage reflects those divides. Conservative outlets highlight deterrence and strength. Liberal outlets question escalation risks, and neutral reporting focuses on operational realities. The larger question remains whether maintaining dominance ensures stability or prolongs confrontation. Share your perspective and stay with us as developments continue to unfold. Another major focus of the current campaign involves weakening Iran's naval capabilities across the Persian Gulf. Recent military updates indicate that several Iranian vessels, including ships linked to drone operations and patrol units, have been targeted in an effort to limit Tehran's ability to threaten shipping routes. Iran has long relied on a strategy of smaller, fast-moving boats, naval mines, and missile-equipped vessels designed to challenge larger navies in narrow waterways. Supporters of these strikes argue that removing this naval threat protects international commerce and reduces the risk of disruptions in the region's vital energy corridor near the Persian Gulf. Critics, however, warn that escalating attacks on naval forces could push Iran toward more aggressive retaliation at sea. Media narratives differ as well. Conservative outlets emphasize restoring maritime security. Liberal outlets highlight escalation risks, while neutral coverage focuses on strategic balance and regional stability. The broader question now is whether reducing Iran's naval strength deters conflict or encourages a different form of response. What do you think? Share your perspective and stay with us as the situation continues to evolve. Attention is now turning to one of the most critical waterways in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow passage carries a significant share of the global oil supply, and any disruption there can immediately ripple through global markets. Recent tensions have raised concerns that Iran could attempt to restrict or threaten traffic through the strait using naval patrols, drones, or missile systems along its coastline. Military planners say securing this route ensures commercial shipping can move safely and prevents sudden spikes in global energy prices. Supporters of stronger action argue that maintaining open navigation is essential for global economic stability. Critics caution that expanding military operations around the strait could intensify confrontation and risk accidental clashes. Media coverage reflects these differences. Conservative outlets stress protecting energy security. Liberal outlets highlight diplomatic solutions and de-escalation, while neutral reporting focuses on the economic stakes and operational risks. The key question now is whether securing this corridor stabilizes the region or raises new tensions. Share your thoughts and stay tuned as the story continues to develop. Another strategy being discussed focuses on weakening the leadership structure of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, often referred to as the IRGC. This group plays a central role in Iran's military operations, overseeing missile programs, regional proxy networks, and internal security. Reports suggest that recent operations have aimed at disrupting command networks and removing senior figures responsible for coordinating military activities. The argument from supporters of this strategy is straightforward. Targeting leadership can slow decision-making and weaken operational control across multiple fronts. Critics, however, warn that such actions could intensify tensions and potentially strengthen hardline elements within Iran's political system. Media coverage reflects these competing narratives. Conservative outlets tend to frame it as dismantling the command structure behind regional threats. Liberal outlets often emphasize the risk of escalation and the impact on diplomatic channels. Neutral reporting focuses on the strategic goal of disrupting coordination without broader instability. The key question now is whether weakening leadership reduces threats or fuels a deeper conflict. What's your perspective? Share your thoughts and stay with us for the next update. Another strategy gaining attention involves encouraging defections within Iran's military ranks, particularly among forces connected to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The idea is not just military pressure, but psychological pressure, sending a message to commanders and sailors that they have options if they choose not to continue fighting. Historically, defections have played a role in weakening governments during periods of conflict, especially when internal divisions already exist. Supporters argue that offering safe passage or immunity could gradually erode the regime's ability to carry out coordinated operations without expanding the conflict militarily. Critics, however, warn that such efforts rarely succeed quickly and could provoke stronger loyalty campaigns within Iran's security structure. Media coverage reflects these differences. Conservative outlets frame it as a smart way to weaken the regime from within. Liberal outlets question its practicality and highlight diplomatic alternatives, while neutral reporting treats it as a long-term pressure tactic rather than a quick solution. The bigger question is whether internal fractures can truly shift the balance. What do you think? Share your perspective and stay tuned for the next update. Another dimension of the strategy focuses on increasing internal pressure on Iran's ruling establishment. Analysts say years of economic sanctions, political restrictions, and public protests have already created tension between the government and parts of the population. Some policymakers believe that sustained external pressure, combined with information campaigns and international isolation, could amplify those internal divisions. The power structure inside Iran is heavily influenced by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which plays a major role in both security and politics. Supporters of this approach argue that empowering internal dissatisfaction could eventually push meaningful change without large-scale military escalation. Critics warn that external pressure sometimes strengthens hardline factions by allowing them to rally nationalistic support. Media framing reflects those differences. Conservative outlets often describe internal pressure as a pathway to political reform. Liberal outlets emphasize humanitarian concerns and diplomacy, while neutral reporting focuses on the uncertainty of how internal dynamics may unfold. The real question is whether internal pressure leads to change or simply deepens instability. What's your perspective? Share your thoughts and stay with us for the next developments. Another critical question now emerging is how long the military campaign should continue. Some officials argue that operations must remain consistent until Iran's ability to launch missiles, drones, or naval threats is significantly reduced. Military planners say partial action may only delay the problem if infrastructure and command networks remain intact, particularly those connected to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Supporters of a sustained campaign believe maintaining pressure now could prevent larger conflicts later and strengthen deterrence across the region. Critics, however, warn that prolonged military operations carry risks, rising costs, regional instability, and the possibility of wider escalation involving additional actors. Media coverage reflects that divide. Conservative outlets often emphasize finishing the mission to eliminate long-term threats. Liberal outlets raise concerns about entering an extended conflict and stress diplomatic alternatives. Neutral reporting tends to focus on strategic timelines and operational realities. The key debate is whether persistence ensures security or risks creating a longer confrontation. What's your view? Join the conversation and stay with us as the next phase of this story unfolds. A major concern now being discussed in policy circles is what happens after immediate threats are reduced. Military analysts warn that if Iran retains the ability to rebuild weapons systems, the cycle of escalation could simply repeat in the future. Over the past 2 decades, Iran has invested heavily in missile production facilities, drone technology, and underground manufacturing sites, many tied to networks overseen by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Supporters of stronger long-term restrictions argue that preventing reconstruction through inspections, sanctions, or continued monitoring is essential to maintaining regional stability. Critics caution that permanent pressure could make diplomatic engagement more difficult and push Iran to expand covert programs. Media coverage reflects these differences. Conservative outlets tend to emphasize dismantling the military infrastructure permanently. Liberal outlets focus on negotiations and international agreements, while neutral reporting highlights the challenge of verifying compliance. The key issue moving forward is whether long-term containment ensures stability or simply postpones the next confrontation. What's your perspective? Share your thoughts and stay tuned as the next developments unfold.